Today is the 1st of August, and I wanted us to remember uh, one of our national heroes. In many cases, we remember them when they are dead, but to the best of my knowledge, he is alive and healthy. Let us celebrate him when he's alive, concerning 1st August 1982. His name is General Mahmoud Mohamed. He played a very unique role in the August 1982 coup attempt. We have had instances where things are not very clear of what happened, and some of the people who know the truth have gone to the graves with the truth. But the little that we remain with, let us try to remember them. Sorry, I have a sore throat. Kenya as a country and the country's military as a formation, and General Mahmoud, why their lives changed forever just for a few hours on Sunday, 1st August 1982. I will concentrate on part of it because talking about that Sunday alone needs to write a book. I'll talk. People wonder why all generals were not in Nairobi, and Mahmoud is the only general who was in Nairobi. I'll talk about circumstances that led to him being there. How the coup affected the Tonje rules. Actually, we have all heard of the Tonje rules. A Ugandan military person tweeted me telling me that even the UPDF, they have started the Tonje rules. That is why you'll find that in the last few years, a lot of veterans, NRA and UNLA, UNLA, Uganda National Liberation Army, and National Resistance Army joined together to form UPDF, which is Uganda People's Defense Forces. I'm told that of late, Uganda People's Defense Force has started observing General Tonje's rule. I want to certify that Leonard Mambo Mbotela, carried a lot of secrets on that day to his grave, and we'll see that. It's unfortunate that he died without telling the truth, and him being elder than me, of course, people will trust him, and he was in a well-placed place, and me had just completed school, so it goes that way. After Moi had a morbid fear for adversaries overthrow, but he knew that the August coup was to happen. Only that it never occurred to him that it would be as big as it later turned out. Of course, Moi had a fear of coups. He could not imagine a more loyal person to head the military than General Jackson Kimeu Mlinge. Jackson Mlinge. That is why Mlinge stayed as the chief of the general staff. Nowadays, they are called chief of the defense forces. That is why Mlinge stayed as chief of the general staff for a very long time. But age was catching him, and Mlinge wanted to go home. Moi then made 2 promotions. When Mlinge wanted to go home, Moi made 2 promotions. At that time, Mlinge was the chief of the general staff, or can we call it the way we call it today, chief of the defense forces. Under him was the head of the army on one side. On the other side, there was the head of the air force, and thirdly, the head of the Navy. Mulinge had no deputy. So what Moi did was he made two promotions. He made Major General Sawe, who was the head of the army. He promoted him to the Lieutenant General Sawe, and made him the Deputy Chief of General Staff. Then he promoted one of the brigadiers, that was Brigadier Mahmoud Mohamed. He promoted him to Major General and made him the army commander. Sawe, after a brief, because Sawe was understudying, General Mulinge. But after some time, Sawe realized that him being the deputy chief of the general staff, or what today we call the vice chief of the defense forces, found that was a very useless position because it was a desk job. It was a desk job, but the army commander had the whole army under him. So Sawe went to Moi. He wanted to revert back to the army commander. Moi said, no, you are senior to the army commander. Just take your time until Mulinge retires, and then you'll be the chief of the general staff, or what we call today chief of the defense forces. But Sawe wanted, if possible, Mahmoud to overtake him. Moi could not agree on that. And so Mahmoud served as army commander for a very short time. He was the major general and army commander. And Sawe was a lieutenant general and the deputy chief of the general staff, what today we call vice chief of defense forces. Now, after that struggle, and Moi had a weakness. Uh, he had a soft spot for people who spoke his language. So he later changed the situation and made Sawe be a lieutenant general, both the army commander and what today we call vice chief of defense forces. By then it was deputy chief of the general staff. Major General Mahmoud was made the deputy army commander. This thing brought a lot of tension between them. They were quarreling all the time, and both of them would carry songi to Moi. But of course, Moi believed the songi of Sawe more than Mahmoud. Then it reached a time when Moi decided to retire General Mahmoud Mohamed. He decided that General Mahmoud Mohamed was to retire and somebody else was to come in as a major general and a deputy army commander, where Sawe would be both, would be a lieutenant general, both the deputy chief of the general staff and the army commander. So the military people were in the northern Kenya for military exercises. But Mahmoud was in Nairobi clearing himself for retirement, returning all government equipment. That is why he was the only person who was around. Now you know why he was the only senior person around. And being the only senior person around, that is how he led the team that retained Moi in the seat. Now, when Moi returned to the seat, he became too much indebted to Mahmoud and asked Mahmoud not to retire. And Moi wanted Mahmoud to be promoted because of the 82. So he promoted him to lieutenant general. There were two lieutenant generals now. There is Lieutenant General Sawe, and who was heading the army. And Mahmoud was transferred to the Air Force to start a new Air Force, which was called 82 Air Force. 82 Air Force. Actually, Kenya Air Force for quite some time was called 82 Air Force. But somebody was sacked in the 82 Air Force and sued the government. And when the Armed Forces Act was read, it was said a military officer is a member of Kenya Army, Kenya Air Force, and Kenya Navy. So the court said a funny body calling himself 82 could not sack somebody. That is why it reverted the name to 82. So the person who went and headed the Air Force was Mahmoud. And Mahmoud is a primary school dropout. He was heading the pilots. That is why General Tonje later said that at no time you can work in the Navy, you can work in the Army, in the Air Force. But if you work in the Air Force and you are not a pilot, you cannot be the Air Force commander. And if you work in the Navy and you are not a sailor, then you cannot be a Navy commander. Uh, you may ask, how can you be those without being an airman? You can be an administrative officer, you can be a doctor, you can be anything but not a pilot or even a sailor, isn't it? So when Mahmoud became a lieutenant general, both of them started their songi songi again. But what Mahmoud had done to Moi was so much that Sawe had to be retired, and Mulinge's days had come. Then Sawe Mahmoud became the chief of the general staff, wearing the Air Force uniform. That is how Mahmoud ended up as the Air Force commander. Mahmoud was also grateful because he was given a big piece of land, for what he did in 82 Air Force, in the 82 attempted coup. That land that today is called Gumo, near the golf course between Coptic Church and Kenyatta Market. Most of the plots there are either his or originally were his. And his brother was made a cabinet minister. So and you see, people wale watu wazee hawatakaki mambo mengi. So when he became the chief of the general staff or the chief of the defense forces, he was a very cool person who did very little. Imagine he was about to retire and he served for 16 more years post retirement. That is why you find that Tonje brought in the rule that somebody has not to stay there forever. Mahmoud tenure as the CGS or CDF was lukewarm because of his age and whatever. First of all, he was elderly and he was on his way home. He was actually overstayed for over 16 years, as I said. His family also benefited through business and whatever. And corruption among Kalenjin commissioned officers became so much that it even affected. You remember the other day we were talking about food, pay as you eat. That is when food programs started having problems during that time, because someone could get a contract to supply a lorry full of, let's say, oranges, and he brings a pickup full of oranges, and nothing could happen there. That is when corruption of the highest you need. That Tonje came and changed a bit of it. And actually, even this thing, people are complaining that the military are now paying for their own food. It is something that Tonje started, and it started with the commissioned officers, and they delayed in taking it up to the other ranks. And that is how uh, you find that nowadays military people have to pay for their food. And as I said, old men usually avoid confrontation. All these were corrected by his deputy and successor, General Tonje. General Tonje came with good rules, And General Tonje had a very competent deputy. But you see, the Tonje rules had to start at a place, and that is why Opande did not end up as being a chief of the defense forces. He was very capable, but Tonje rules had said that the Nini, the head of the military has to rotate with each and every one any of the other two also have the other. During those days, like during Kenyatta's time, uh, the highest, the most senior person in the Air Force and Navy was a lieutenant colonel. But by the time Tonja reached there, we had brigadiers and generals who were in the Navy and Air Force, so they could take over. If you watch three or more interviews that the late Leonard Mambo gave about what happened on the first of that day, you'll find a lot of discrepancies. At first, he says Tonje and then Mahmoud knew him. At other times, he gives a lot of whatever. But in today's anniversary, I wanted us to celebrate uh, General Mahmoud. The Somalis call him Brigadier. In the 82, in the whole of August in 1982, if you walked around Garissa, you would not hear Brigadier. They were very proud that a fellow brigadier of theirs, a fellow Somali of theirs, had returned Moi to his seat. And he had returned Moi to the seat. They did not know that he had been promoted from brigadier to major general. So they're saying, the way they talk, and then they say, Brigadier, Brigadier. And he's a good fellow. He has a very good family. We are good family friends, and I love that family. Thank you.